Hello, everyone. I am Jennifer Braverman.
And I'm Ellen Selm.
And welcome to our podcast, Stories from the Earth,
where we explore mankind's relationship and connection with the natural world.
We would like to take a quick moment to invite our listeners to consider a humble little donation. You can go to our Anchor page and donate for $1, $10, or $5 a month, and that would really help support this show and its growth. And we appreciate that. And also, we are now on Apple Podcasts.
Today, we're going to be talking with Josh Fox, instructor and practitioner of Fox Herbs and Acupuncture in Asheville, North Carolina. In addition to being a licensed acupuncturist and herbalist, Josh also is a singer-songwriter and storyteller who enjoys themes and focus of the natural world in some of his creations. So we'll be sharing some of those as well. Thanks, Josh.
Yeah, so glad to be with y'all.
Can you tell us a little bit about what led to your pursuit on a professional level of natural healing arts and herbalism and that sort of thing? Like what got you to where you are now?
Well, I think it was somewhere 15, 20 years ago, living out on the West Coast, and I was super into dreaming, lucid dreaming and vivid dreaming, and somebody one day said that there's this plant out there called mugwort, and if I find it and put a little bit under my pillow, that might influence my dreams a little bit. And so there was actually some growing not too far down from this little trailer I was living in a blackberry thicket in Eugene, Oregon. I put some under my pillow, and that night I had the most intensely colorful, vivid dreams. And I tried it for a few nights. They remained colorful, and I started getting anxious at that point. Started having nightmares after night 3, and then insomnia came. And but as soon as I kind of left that room, I was able to sleep again, and it showed me how powerful this plant was. I'd never heard about it, and I figured that if this plant was so powerful that I didn't even have to ingest it for it to affect me so deeply, there's probably thousands of other herbs out there that I just don't know about. And kind of slowly and steadily grew my interest and started studying a little here and there with many different places, and now find myself in private practice weaving plants into my life in so many ways.
They have a way of doing that. They just kind of seed themselves in. Once you're in, you're kind of hooked.
Yeah, for sure. And they guided me at some point to Southern Appalachia, where I thought I was just going to spend 6 months doing an herbal program. And now, almost 15 years later, I'm still here because there's still more to learn and more to figure out with them.
Lifelong journey, that is.
For sure.
So speaking of education, what has your botanical / herbal education been like?
It began on the West Coast. I found some teachers, Darren Huckle and Ben Zappin, who are students of Michael Tierra's.
Nice.
And so they really incorporated a lot of Chinese medicine and energetics into what they were doing. And it just gave me just burgeoning curiosity to devour whatever I could around herbs. Started accumulating books, and eventually I made my way to some rainbow gatherings where I met Frank Cook, who is just an enormous influence. Legendary.
Yeah.
That's
a very lucky chance you got to meet him. That's awesome.
Yeah. And so if viewers, listeners have never heard about him, this is epic. It felt like he was 7 feet tall, big baritone voice, dragging giant dreadlocks around the world, introducing people to plants, but really using plants as a stepping stone to developing just bigger wisdom on how to live on our planet Earth. And so he kind of nurtured my curiosity to go deeper. So I went on to study with Corey Pine Shane, apprenticed with him, which brought me to Asheville area. Then quickly started teaching for his school. I lived out with Joe Hollis out at Mountain Gardens and went deeper with Chinese medicine and growing the herbs and talking to the plants, learning from them directly. And then, as if like I couldn't be satiated, I decided to jump into Chinese medicine school because I knew it would occupy me for at least 4 years. And so I could get more of an old herbal understanding with it. And I think beyond there, just doing a lot of plant teaching has continued my education, just staying curious, teaching at a lot of the herb schools and at the Chinese medicine college has kept me learning and just growing with the plants.
Now, your website has a section on it that says classes. So outside of the local Chinese medicine school and Corey Pine School, do you teach some things directly yourself, either online or in person, that folks like listeners who might not even be in the area could find you and check you out?
I haven't done online teaching yet. It might be coming soon. And most of my herbal teaching is really just relegated to the Blue Ridge School these days. But some more of my work, which I'm sure we'll dip our toes into, has been grief work. And some of the more impassioned teaching I've been doing lately has been training people how to hold ritual around grief, teaching people how to sit with grief, and even weaving in some of that herbal knowledge along with it. So that's been the big, kind of more of my focus these days.
Seems very apropos given the way the world's gone, especially in the last year.
Yeah, someone jokingly, it's like, if you work with grief, you're never going to really run out of work for yourself. And it's really true. There's so much up now, especially in this kind of pandemic time. But in truth, just there's so much grief to where the world is now, where the earth is now, where we've come with in this culture that's orphaned itself and moved so far away from connection with the earth, that there's plenty to tap into.
So besides having a private acupuncture practice and teaching at herb schools, you also do music. You also write songs about herbs, which we thought was super cool.
Yeah.
And you've written some songs relating to nature and specific herbs. You put out a recording, and that is titled Spells Cast by Rain, which is on Bandcamp, and we will link that so people can listen to all the songs. Mm-hmm. What was the inspiration behind doing this project, and do you have more musical storytelling endeavors in the works?
Well, this came along partially through my teaching, just realizing that reading herb books is something very new, and that most cultures actually shared a lot of their wisdom and knowledge of the plants through telling stories and singing songs. I definitely have to tip my hat to Jim Duke and Doug Elliott for showing me what it's like to bring some whimsical plant songs out. And I just started crafting more of a left brain kind of thing. And then there's other songs that the plants just kind of gave me, or certain tunes would go in my head every time I was around yellow root or jewelweed. I started accumulating this, and the more I'd sing them around campfires and song circles, the more people kept asking, wanting to hear them. You can only sing them so many times, so I decided to record, put some energy in the studio before my son was born. And it captures 9 of these songs, and produced with some of my favorite musicians in the Asheville area came on to help produce that album. And since then, there's probably 50 other songs that haven't made it on yet. The one I'm most excited about, which we actually featured in this giant puppet theater in a story my friend wrote called Ancestor Forest, we did a big production on Earth Day, and it featured a song I did called "The Earth Is Alive." And what it is it's a song about phenology, which means kind of like the order or occurrences that happen based on other occurrences. And so it goes through 4 seasons: early spring, late spring, summer, and fall. For each of those verses, it talks about the progression of plants. And so you can follow the song all the way through and know the plants of Southern Appalachia based on kind of the order that they show up.
Nice.
And
Very
so
good teaching tool.
every year I'm trying to list and keep track of what blooms first and what blooms next and what happens after the dandelions and before the daffodils and the red buds. And the song is an attempt to get it right.
Right. We were talking with Deanna Rose when we were interviewing her, and she does music as well. And I think we were talking about this person makes songs about herbs. And the thing is that, like, when you read herbal books, they can be kind of dry and a little boring, and it's hard to keep that information in your brain. It's just on the page there. And so the idea of having these songs, these new songs about herbs around was so cool, because it's almost like bringing back sort of that way of teaching where, like, probably in the past we didn't learn it from books, we learned it from someone else in real life and hands-on situations. So that's why we were excited about it.
Yeah. And there's so many traditions that have embedded the plants into the music, knowing that we can access the medicine of plants in different ways instead of just through ingestion. And you really see that with a lot of the Peruvian plant medicine songs, the Icaros, where just calling these plants into the circle brings some of their magic forth. And even my teacher, Frank Cook, would say, with echinacea, we don't need to take it. We can just think about it and invite that medicine into our body. And so there's also a real power of, like, we're going to sing the song of about dandelion and really feel the magic as it comes through.
I was listening to them, and they're just so happy. I don't know. They just make me smile, and I was just like, I felt like you did capture the essence of the plants really well.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah, so if you've got 50 more sitting on a shelf somewhere and you got a few more albums worth of material, that's awesome.
I think there'll be someday where they get recorded. So much big work to do in this world. So
Yes.
it's also, I feel like I differ from a lot of musicians, where I'm not a performer. I don't mind performing once in a while, but it's not my goal to kind of set up gigs from town to town, but to really, I use these songs in ritual. I use these songs one-on-one with my patients in my private practice. I use this as medicine, and medicine can be done through performance, but I tend to use them more ceremonially as a way for healing, individual and group healing.
That makes sense. Kind of puts a little more of an intimate touch to it. If it's one-on-one with somebody you're doing acupuncture and maybe other things, it's almost like, well, some people might be familiar with sound healing in terms of musical healing ability, but in your case, adding the words and the meaning in the words too, that's kind of a nice different spin on it.
Yeah, for sure.
So you mentioned in an email about this song called Goldenrod, and that it fits well into the fall season, which is the season that we are in. And it talks about letting go. So along with acupuncture and herbal medicine, you also do work with grief, which you mentioned earlier.
Yeah.
Can you tell us a little more about your work with grief and about the song Goldenrod and how it connects with that work. And we're going to listen to the song now, and then when we come back, we'll talk about it.
Awesome.
So let I go, 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 so let I go. So let I go. So let I go. So let I go. So let I go.
So solid I go walking in the colors of the fall. Water moves within me, I can let go of it all. Taking in the beauty every moment, every day. Knowing in my heart that all creation fades away. So solid I go walking in the colors of the fall. Water moves within me, I can let go of it all. Taking in the beauty every moment, every day. Knowing in my heart that all creation fades away.
So let I go. 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 So let I go.
So let I go walking in the colors of the fall. Water moves within me, I can let go of it all. Taking in the beauty every moment, every day. Knowing in my heart that all creation fades away. So let I go walking in the colors of the fall. Water moves within me, I can let go of it all. Taking in the beauty every moment, every day. Knowing in my heart that all creation fades away. So let I go walking in the colors of the fall. Water moves within me, I can let go of it all. Taking in the beauty every moment, every day. Knowing in my heart that all creation fades away. So let I go walking in the colors of the fall. The water moves within me, I can let go of it all. Taking in the beauty every moment, every day. Knowing in my heart that all creation fades away. So solid I go walking in the colors of the fall. The water moves within me, I can let go of it all. Taking in the beauty every moment, every day. Knowing in my heart that all creation fades away.
Okay, we're back. I hope everyone enjoyed the song.
Yeah. So goldenrod to me marks the tail end of the great procession of blooms. It's certainly not the last plant to bloom, but it is part of that grand finale as we move into fall. And I kind of liken all the different species of goldenrod in their, golden yellow colors like the grand finale of a fireworks show. They kind of look like fireworks that just poof out in anticipation of the quiet, in anticipation of the darkness. And so the song it recognizes some of the medicine of goldenrod, helps the waters move through us, and then also mark that sense of completion, that all creation fades away, that the language of grief, like everything that we love we're going to lose at some point. To understand that life is precious and temporary, and through our life we're going to have these losses, individual losses of parts of the earth, loss of loved ones. It's so fitting in the fall time. If we really observe nature, we see that fall is the darker time. It's the time where all the energy starts to, in the plants and in humans too, we start to internalize, we start to deepen. There's more of introspection. It's not following that outer, excitement and abundance of the spring and summer months. It's a coming back into ourselves. A lot of the native traditions talk about that being of the West, the sunset time. And nature reminds us that there's balance in everything. So as a tree, the branches can't stretch out unless the roots go just as deep. And so something that we're kind of missing in our culture is doing that root work, is knowing that things can't just get faster and faster and better and exciting. And there has to be like a downward decline to the energetics of everything we do. And with that, if we're going to enjoy things and feel the joy and abundance and love of things, there's also going to be loss. There's also going to be death. There's also going to be giving up our leaves like the goldenrod, giving up the foliage and bringing that energy back into the root to remember its source, what we are and what our souls want to do. And so a big part of my work has just turned out to be normalizing grief in our culture, normalizing it not as a pathological thing, but actually part of the healthy cycle that we go through as humans. Knowing that physiologically, like moving grief can be the healthiest thing because it helps really appreciate what we've loved, to honor that which we've loved and lost, so we can make space in ourselves for more joy. So our heart cracks open so it can be rebuilt and be able to hold more light. They say there's a crack in everything, and that's how the light gets in. There's a truth in that we have to crack apart. We have to fall apart in order to show back up again. Culturally, there's a great reluctance in doing that. Yeah. Even when we lose somebody, what I've witnessed in certain cultures when folks pass away, there's just an enormous amount of grieving and wailing and in keening, and we just don't see it. Things are kind of wrapped up tightly in most of the kind of modern American funerals that I've seen. And so there's really this time of the year, and whatever time of the year it might happen, I offer the big invitation to really, when grief knocks at your door, to let him in, give him all the space he wants, give him all the food he wants, the medicines, like really sit down and make time to let this energy move through you. Because as a private practitioner, having seen so much pathology come to my door, I've recognized over time that so many issues, so many physical issues that people show up with, different autoimmune diseases, cystitis, nephritis, fibroids, different lung congestion issues, issues of the heart, anything you can name, chronic fatigue syndrome, there's always this underpinning that there's some grief underneath that. Grief, trauma, maybe some shadows there that are kind of clogging the way and congesting the energetic body, to which it starts affecting the physical body.
I was actually going to ask you, being that you were a practitioner, how much you had thought that that there was that link between, in this Western culture that's kind of clamped down somewhat on its deeper emotions, at least in public spaces and whatnot, that, it seems like we've done that so long, we become challenged to even express it to ourselves, let alone anything wider than that. And if that could point to a link in some of our chronic conditions that we see in health. But yeah, you more or less just answered that in your explanation. So you do see a link a lot of times, carried their grief and it's turned into a physical manifestation.
Yeah, the more I've been working on this level, the more I see folks healed from releasing this grief, basically allowing energy to move where it's getting blocked. In Chinese medicine, they say that all pain points to stagnation. And so pain being kind of the quintessential pathology that associated with many of our illnesses. They knew in the ancient times that there's something stagnant, and it might take the form of phlegm or qi or blood or food stasis that's there. And ultimately, the energetic blueprint underneath that comes from our energetic or emotional body of things that haven't been resolved, things that the body's pushing up against. And what I see is what we resist persists. So if we don't take time to feel into everything we need to feel into, then it's a place where things can get stuck and stagnant and start injuring the body.
So when you're doing this work with folks, it sounds to me like, maybe in an ideal world, people would learn the skills that you're trying to imbue in them before even a major loss, so that they're better equipped to handle anything that might come up. I'm sure, even with most healthcare, people tend to be reactive more than proactive. So I imagine you get a lot of people who've been stuck and they're now looking for what they can do to be unstuck. But I just wonder if for your work continuing, do you hope to get to a point where you're even like attracting people from that standpoint of like, no, this is important for everybody to know now. Anytime is a good time. Don't just wait till you lose a loved one or something like that, right?
Yeah. In some ways, it's part of my medicine to normalize this grief work. So these grief rituals we've been doing, I just did 4 of them last month. People are starting to show up out of curiosity, which is a beautiful thing now, of like, oh, maybe there is something here to release, and to understand that grief isn't just about losing or somebody dying in your family, but grief can be losing an opportunity or old heartbreak you never got the chance to feel in. It could be recognizing ourselves as cultural orphans, disconnected from ancestors and our indigenous roots. It could be the shame and guilt that lies inside of ourselves for not receiving the love or being received or accepted when we were born into a certain world or a certain family. And so all these things, they leave trails of resistance. They leave gunk in our system that gets sticky along the way. And so just to normalize grief in our culture is to recognize that if we're all going to get together for celebrations and weddings and birthdays and bar mitzvahs and anniversaries, then we should also get together and do some of this grief work and recognize that like this doesn't have to be a private thing, and it doesn't have to be a shameful thing. It's actually our technology of how to return back to the joy.
That's interesting thinking about that. when you were just listing out all these, what people would say, just positive reasons people get together and gather. And it's like outside of a funeral, which is very kind of dry and somber, a lot of times there isn't anything beyond that. I would say it seems like it's become more popular for people to do like celebration of life type gatherings, but overall, that is such a nice concept to imagine that, like, okay, it takes a village, right? Like, don't just be alone in your sorrow. You can just kind of gives a whole new meaning to a pity party. I don't know. It's like put a
Yeah.
positive spin on the pity party.
Yeah, some friends of mine call it, oh, you're leading another sad party. Sometimes I ask myself, I'm like, gosh, how did I get trapped into doing all this grief work? And then I go to a ritual. I might be facilitating. I go to the altar and do the work. And then I remember, like, I just feel so much lighter and so much better and so much clearer. Usually we're all laughing by the end of these days together. And it's why I stand by this work and feel like it's so vital.
Yeah, that's awesome. It's like proof in a session that you see it come out the other side.
Yeah,
that's great.
I really like well, at least in a lot of anime that I watch, and I believe other media of Japan, they have these like ancestor shrines in their house.
Mm-hmm.
And I really like that idea because it's like, it's a way of connecting to the people that we've lost.
Mm-hmm.
It doesn't seem like it's a negative way. Usually it's like positive. They're giving them their favorite foods. They're chatting with them, and I think that in our culture, the only thing we have that is visiting maybe somebody's gravesite. And this is in the house, and something about that I just really like.
Beautiful. And there's some teachings I've kind of gleaned from some indigenous cultures around the need to go through that grieving process in order for those deceased ones to properly become ancestors. And so there's something on both sides of it. It's like they need us to acknowledge that loss to bring them to that place of being ancestors. And we need to do that emptying so we can open up to a new kind of relationship with them. Because if we don't properly grieve those that have passed, we're stuck in the mindset of having lost the way that we once related all of our life. But if we can grieve that, we're opening up a new relationship to where we can stay connected in this new form, more through the spiritual veil. And that's no small thing. Obviously, as you mentioned, in Japan, having the ancestors there in the home. I'm thinking too of the Dia de los Muertos in Mexico, or the Dia Frentos, with all the pictures of everybody. It's this idea that the ancestors aren't people who have just passed. They're still part of the community. They're actually like counted within the circle of their family as much as anybody living, because there's important work on the other side.
Can you tell us a little bit about your song writing process and like how you maybe pick which plants to write about?
I like to say that they pick me. And the process it's so different every time. I love going out morel hunting, and I've been going, I don't know, for 10, 12 years or so, in the early spring, just when the conditions are right. When the mat changes from the fall leaves to like more of the greenish spring ephemerals, when the lindera is out, when the sister ivy puts off its first leaves, and the fiddleheads are bouncing out, it's about time to go to the North Coves, where this is all erupting. The little bloodroot flowers are on their way. That time a song comes, which is the song of the morels, and I just start whistling it in my head, and I believe it leads me to them. I start to see them more and more as I'm whistling this tune all day, walking through. But if you asked me to whistle it now or sing it, I wouldn't be able to. It's a song that perfectly sits in the forest with these creatures. And so there's songs like that that'll never get sung or recorded. There's a song of the yellow root that I've been working with for 8 years, and little pieces come. Maybe that'll be done at some point. Some of them are more like odes. Dandelion had been bringing me so much joy, and there were some of my teachers, Frank Cook and Greenlight, this other older herbalist, had kind of initiated me into the joy of dandelion. And so I just kind of wrote that, extolling the joy of that peak moment that I see here in Appalachia in early April, when all of those blooms just kind of explode all together. That was a process of, I think, of following the natural joy of the dandelion. There's a mangrove song I wrote, which a tune just started whistling in my head. And then some old sailor voyager who once, paddled the seas close to Florida in mangrove country started singing in his accent the verses and the stories of him being with the mangroves. And so all of these just kind of have a unique impression. I've got a lot of Virgo in my chart, and I want it to be all nicely boxed in, where I can just kind of like finish these songs and have them tidy and produce them and put them in these boxes for people to hear. And I know that nature doesn't work like that. Everything's got its own pace and timing.
Now, the mangrove song, were you down in that area when it came to you?
Well, the song whistled in my head up here in the winter. And while I was climbing around in the mangroves, that song emerged from me, and I knew the rest of it just downloaded at that point. Like this whole story came through that first little melody that had shown up and almost waiting to be born in that place. Or perhaps it was that melody that called me down to the mangroves in order to register the rest of the song.
So mangrove and dandelion are on the album, and we're just gonna play those two songs for everyone to hear so you get an idea of them, and then we'll come back for more questions.
Awesome.
Paddling for days in an endless sea, it seemed at last I'd spotted some land, only to behold a stand of mangrove trees, an isle devoid of earth and sand. Mangrove, you've amazed me at how you thrive and colonize the brackish sea, constantly unfazed by the passing waves. It seems impossible to me. I'm not so very wise, but I do believe my eyes, and it seems impossible to me. If I were a snail in a spiraled shell, upon your bark I might parade. And if I were a brilliant bromeliad, I'd make a home beneath your shade. But I am just a human in need of land to rest me weary bones and me head. So onwards I must go to another isle, where I might find some ground instead. Your buttressed roots are nice, but they simply won't suffice, so I'll have to find some ground instead. To me the mangrove smiled and they echoed back, just twine your bed between my trees. The least that I can do is provide for you a restful night of peace and ease. The tides will not alarm you, the ocean waves can't harm you. Enjoy a night of peace and ease. A seafarer I once was for many a moon, exploring on the open seas. But ne'er another night did I feel more held than in the bosom of those trees. I'll never take for granted a dream time so enchanted within the bosom of those trees. To you I give the blessing of the mangrove trees, to find your niche where'er you may rove. May you be unfazed by the passing waves, and thrive within the harshest cove. May you cross the seas with such peacefulness and ease, to thrive within the harshest cove. Bitter roots and flowers sweet, you drain out winter's darkness and clear out my toxic heat. A diuretic superstar, your jagged leaves remind me that there's beauty in our scars. You're such a potent medicine for body, heart and mind. How I long for early April when I witness fields explode with dandelions. In Aries realm, energy unfurled, fearless of a springtime frost, you burst into this world. Soft but tough and tenaciously alive, you push up through the concrete cracks and everywhere you thrive. Your energetic radiance sends shivers down my spine. How I treasure early April when I witness fields explode with dandelions. Dandelion, your presence and your beauty are divine. Dandelion, reflecting back the springtime sunny shine. Salads and I'll drink you in my wine. So happy early April, let's all witness fields explode with dandelion. Dandelion, your presence and your beauty are divine. Dandelion, reflecting back the springtime sunny shine. Your flowers leave a sphere behind, comprised of parachuting seeds that make more dandelions. These magic seeds, when gently blown, disperse our wishes to the wind, and in the earth they're sown. I'm endlessly impressed by your true elegant design. How I long for early April when I witness fields explode with dandelion. Your presence and your beauty are divine. Dandelion, reflecting back the springtime sunny shine. Dandelion, your presence and your beauty are divine. Reflecting back the springtime sunny shine. Oh, reflecting back the springtime sunny shine. Oh, reflecting back the springtime sunny shine.
Well, we're back, and I hope you've enjoyed those songs. Dandelion is one of my favorites, as I probably have mentioned, and I love dandelion a lot. It was one of the first plants that I started working with, and it's always very happy, and it's just all over the place.
That one really needed the honor of a song in order to help break it out of its much maligned role in our culture.
For sure. Yeah. Well, I think we're one of the unique cultures that's kind of trashed it for a while. But being one that grows on nearly every continent and in so many places, it has been revered by so many other cultures. So I think we're just in the minority of those who have decided it was some kind of toxic weed that we need out of our yards.
I mean, literally, if you go look at a bottle of weed killer, there's a picture of a dandelion on it.
Yeah. I mean, it's that powerful of a plant that it's almost revered in that way.
Yeah.
It's such a powerful, challenging the grave order of endless lawn.
Well, you kind of told us what the first herb was you connected with and why in terms of the mugwort story. So maybe to build on that, I would say, what is the first herb you connected with and why in terms of sitting with one or having it kind of speak to you, be it something that inspired a song or not, or just inspired your work? Because it seems like mugwort somebody told you about, you went and found it, you had that experience that elevated work you were already doing with the lucid dreaming. What was like the next plant to come to you and be like, hey, since you're on this whole plant kick, what about me?
Gosh, there are a few. There's been many teachers along the way. Yarrow was certainly one that popped up early on. And I remember also being blown away on a camping trip where I burned the crap out of my fingers and chewed up a leaf and put it on, and immediately felt the pain sensation go away, and immediately felt the just felt healing happening. So it quickly became an ally, and it's kind of followed me along the way. I was even teaching a plant field trip up in the Joyce Kilmer area. We got up onto some ridge lately, and I've been so deep in the grief work, I haven't forgotten or lost my connection with plants, but yarrow is waiting for me up at the top of this meadow that I was doing a botany class with these students. And on the walk in, I had the most unbelievably painful toothache, and I've never had anything like that. And I turned to my co-teacher, And I was like, I don't think I'm going to make it through this week of teaching. Like, I think I might have to go drive back to Asheville and get some kind of emergency dental work because this thing's laying me out. And I just I saw Yara chuckling at me from the background, and I went up and put my ear down to listen in the way I haven't in a while. It kind of asked a question in the way plants ask questions, and it was kind of like, can't I be of assistance here? And I've always seen yarrow as this panacea of plants, and I went through a yarrow song in my head that some friends had written, thinking of all the ways, and I'm like, I don't remember toothache. Oh, but there's something about the root of yarrow, which seldom gets used, which has a lot of those like spicy alkamides, like black pepper, echinacea. Immediately then, one offered itself to me to be able to chew up. And again, I was blown away. This is years after, like, okay, I know these plants are powerful, but I chewed some up and relief in 15 minutes. In the entire 5 days, it never came back, that tooth pain. And so once again, I just, this connection with yarrow has been ever present. And I continue to learn. I think that's a big humbling lesson I keep coming back to. We can get in our own ways sometimes by thinking we know this plant, even our very favorite ones that we think we know everything. But just like any one of our friends, they surprise us sometimes. There's some little secret in their back pocket that we get to understand. And to think you know everything about somebody or something or some plant is to actually put a wall up. But to continue with curiosity and wonderment is to stay in relationship with it. That was such a big teaching lesson for me right there, especially with the pride of being a teacher and like, okay, I know I'm supposed to know everything about these, to remember how much I still have to learn and grow.
Well, people, are so conditioned by the healthcare system, maybe as it is, to just have that thinking of, this does this for this. You can point at this to say this hurts, so you take this thing and it does this, and then you're, and you can't, even though the industry tries with, standardized extracts, with of specific constituents that they research, like there might be a time and a place, but sometimes it's like throwing the baby out with the bathwater, so to speak. It's like there's so many compounds in every single plant, and they're working in concert with one another, that the thought that you're ever going to know all of everyone, it's just that's rather presumptuous, if people think that like, oh yes, I have all of dandelion figured out, and then or yarrow, that was a better example. Nobody talks about the root hardly ever, and it's like, oh yeah, but there's that thing that it does. Surprise.
Beyond compounds, there's just so much magic and there's so much mystery in what we can't quantify, what we can't see. I know some plant healers that would just work with 3 plants their entire life, or just one plant. That was like the master teacher plant for them. That could be called on to do all sorts of things that you never read in books. But it's just about relationship and cultivating that, just having faith in that mystery and having faith in what we don't know or can't see.
I always appreciated that approach of the Michael Tiara, because he's mentioned that in his books about, like sometimes it's better to just know, maybe 10 or 12 pretty well and not worry about all the rest. And that's enough of an arsenal, so to speak, for your work without having to think that you're ever going to learn everything.
And we're here in Southern Appalachia, we are just blessed by the crazy abundance of plants. So it's easy to get caught up into like, well, let me figure out the 300 ones that are in these woods. You can easily get lost in just the vastness of what's available here. But really, if I can just follow a couple of them like through the seasons and really see the ins and outs of, Biden's is a plant I've known forever, but only this season have I really started to, or this past year, did I ever start to really watch like how it grows and how it takes off and its seeds and its flowers. Yeah, sometimes it's helpful to narrow our sight.
So tell us some ways in which you connect with the natural world and or stay grounded. And I think it's especially important in the times you're living in to try to stay as grounded as possible.
For me, it's important to feel humbled by the earth. And that happens, I notice, when I climb trees. It helps me feel small and feel held by something bigger. I just went on a pilgrimage out west into the desert, and as a counterpoint to being here in Appalachia and getting to just feel like, wow, this is a new environment I don't know, and I'm so small in this big desert. Did a vision quest out there, and that really helped me ground in. Staying curious is a huge part of that, because there's something about that humility and curiosity that keep us as a child with a certain sense of wonderment. I live with a bunch of gardeners. I tend to keep a few plants. This year I really just had 3 tobacco plants that I just loved up on. And something about the interplay and exchange with those plants just kind of rooted me down in the way that tobacco does. Also rooted me up in a way. I grew to be 12 feet tall, which I was blown away by. So staying engaged with that process. My curiosity right now in the plant world has been with the fumitory plant. So replacing white sage with different resins from our evergreens in this area to burn on coals, finding alternatives to use in rituals, things that are either local or can be handcrafted in really good ways. And so that pursuit has kept me connected and grounded. There's other things like meditation and dance and singing that help too.
We like to ask this to anybody involved with natural healing sort of realms. How would you define health and healing?
That's a great question. The more I've sat with it, the more I recognize that medicine or poison can be the same thing, just kind of on a different perspective. I've come to really deeply believe that we've incarnated on earth here to kind of refine our soul for it to shine a bit more. And so in order to do that, we have to go through these initiations and journeys and go through some hard stuff in order to emerge a bit shinier or to gain certain treasures that we find in the cave. There's an importance not to rush the net or lose out on the lessons that we can gain. And so I think healing is that. It's that process of accepting, that process of surrendering into whatever transformation needs to happen. It's not keeping yourself, in a soft padded box and nothing happens, but it's to come into full aliveness, whatever that aliveness might look like. I think it was in Martine Brechtel's book, Secrets of the Talking Jaguar, or something else he had written at one point, about the idea of the shaman wasn't there to keep you from dying. It was to help you die well. And so it got me thinking about the healer's job is to just help people live well and fully, not to skirt around the surface and avoid the inevitable, but to really kind of seize life with 2 hands. So if we can be present to whatever pain might show up, if we can be present to whatever struggles might happen in life, if we can be present with just whatever offers itself in the moment, then that feels really healing to me, staying in that place of aliveness.
Just thinking about but some pain just sort of smacks you in the face, and you can't ignore it.
Uh-huh.
So that's maybe that's why so that you don't ignore it.
Right. Yeah. We've created millions of ways of how to distract ourselves away from that pain, but the big question is, like, can we dig in? Like, what is this saying? What is the wisdom of our body trying to tell us? What is this moment in time offering us? What opportunity is right here that we don't want to push away?
I feel like after we do enough of these interviews, we should just like compile a huge list of all of these beautiful definitions of health and healing, and it'll just be like this amazing inspirational piece for people to read over.
For sure.
That's a good idea.
I'd love to read that.
So we're gonna go back to just herbalism in general for a minute. What role do you feel herbal medicine might play in our future?
I think the future of our medicine is the past of our medicine, and we can't forget that we've been evolving and living with these plants for just like millennia. That 150 years ago, herbal medicine was the medicine for us in our culture, and for 80% of the world right now, it's still the main medicine. And I want to define herbal medicine too, not just as like little bottles of tincture or pills that you might pop, kind of in these allopathic packages, but just our connection with these plants through the continuum of herbal medicine and food, on that continuum of keeping us well. I'm in this day and age, I have skeptical hope for humans. I feel good about that the earth is going to be fine. And I really wonder if we're going to maintain things for ourselves to exist and sustain on this planet. And I think if we make that choice that we want to be here, and that we want 7 generations to follow us, it's going to need to be coming back into right relationship with these plants, these helping plants, right relationship with the animals as well, and realize that we all need to thrive for each other to thrive. Mm-hmm. Our coexistence is like mutually dependent, is what I'm trying to say. Yeah, I think there's kind of a choice point we're at right now. And I know so many of us are choosing to come back and remember in this big way.
That interconnectedness can be sparked by, or that memory of that interconnectedness or the respect of it can be sparked by so many things too, like plants are one of those things, maybe it's somebody's animal, maybe it's somebody's just appreciation of the land they're on, as a whole, whatever the little tipping point is, that's a good sign to get more minds turned back towards those thoughts of interconnectedness.
Yeah,
that's definitely a big role for herbs to play, I would say.
Yeah, and I think it's really important. It's important that we don't receive herbs in our life within this allopathic framework of like, okay, you're sick, like take this herb and you'll be better. Certainly, like it's moving in the right direction, but kind of in the footsteps of Frank Cook, it's more about bigger webs of interconnection. It's about coming back into that right relationship. It's about coming into deeper understanding of our home, this earth, feeling yourself as a part of it, not just kind of like extracting little bits of it. And there's been something fascinating to stand back and look at some of those invasive plants that have made their way here. So many of them have come from Asia. And I'm thinking in my mind right now about Japanese honeysuckle and kudzu, Japanese knotweed. It's fascinating to, on one level, it's like, oh my gosh, we need to do something about these plants. They're taking over. Kudzu is taking over all these, empty fields, which it's true. But on another level of reality, it's like, okay, why are they here? Like, what do they have to show us and teach us? What does the woolly adelgid have to teach us? Maybe it's here to create more reishi because that's what we need. Especially in light of the pandemic, a virus coming from Asia, it's interesting to have all these other plants that spread around us really quickly. And incidentally, I've in the research I've done and also in clinically what I've used a lot of those plants as treatments for COVID to work with the conditions that a lot of patients have been left with, specifically the knotweed, the honeysuckle, and kudzu. And it's fascinating to think about, like, okay, maybe they brought themselves over here because to share their medicines abundantly, like super abundantly in this time where we need them most. And if we can cue into that, we can benefit from them. The answers tend to be right in front of us, or at least more questions.
Most of the plants that we, are treating as invasive here do all have some sort of use, whether it's food, fiber, medicine, all of the above, So it's like invasive by whose standards, right? Like there could come a time and a place where you will be very thankful that plant is in your backyard,
Yeah. And maybe we won't know, again, back to the human knowing, but there's some mystery in there where, their destiny is entwined with ours, either personally or culturally.
So this is a very broad question. It's going to be one of those kind of things like, oh, how can I pick just one? But what would you say most inspires you about plants or nature in general?
What inspires me is that just most of the answers I'm looking for, the wisdom I need for my personal life, whether it's relationship drama, whether it's trying to understand some logical puzzle, or anything I could ask, nature seems to just always have something I can observe to answer those questions. I just have to put that question out there and stay patient and stay curious. And often it just presents itself in the way the birds talk to each other, or the branching of a tree, or the way the fall leaves come and so perfectly create this like insulation for everything underneath it. As I'm trying to insulate my house and understand like the best way to understand that insulation's a matter of like trapping air pockets. And I'm like, oh my gosh, these leaves are doing it perfectly as they stack up. These plants have just like perfected how to be in the world in such an effortless, beautiful way. And if I can sit still enough, it's beautiful to be able to receive those teachings in true kind of Taoist form.
I appreciate that you keep using the word curiosity. I've done a little reading into the practices of nonviolent communication, and that's one of the tenets of that communication style is to always be approaching the person you're going to communicate with a curiosity, because it's going to let you remain open for whatever comes next without having those any kind of predisposed judgments and so forth. So to hear you use the word, it's like, oh, okay, now we're taking it beyond just human to human communication. We're talking about worldly communication, and it's just as applicable, if not even more so, there for humans' ability to communicate with the natural world around us, is to maintain that curiosity. That's great.
What are some of your favorite herbal/plant books, or for that matter, any books pertaining to the natural world and humans' relation to it?
Hmm.
You may like to share.
Yeah. I think the biggest, most favoritist of mine is the Robin Wall Kimmerer's Braiding Sweetgrass.
There's a theme on this show.
Yeah, it's not the first time you've heard this one. She perfectly holds all those pieces that really light me up. Just the love of plants and the interconnectedness of indigenous wisdom and scientific knowledge. And yeah, every essay is this perfect little precious package that I just read over and over again. And I read it to my herbal students. We always read the passage entitled "The Honorable Harvest" when talking about ethical wildcrafting, because I can't say what she does better.
That's great that you use it in your class.
Yeah.
Yeah, that book is amazing, and I love that she did the audio version too. So if you get the audio version, you can hear her voice, and it's just even more beautiful. And yeah, makes me cry every time I listen to it. So.
For sure.
And I'll put that link in the description for anyone who doesn't know about that book. Please check it out. It's awesome. There's a lot in there. So, it took me a while to listen to it because I kept having to sort of stop and.
You gotta stop and just let it all sink in.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's like a very intense love letter to nature, about nature.
There's another, a fictional book that came out that's been a favorite called, have y'all read The Overstory?
I've read part of it. I'm in the middle.
It's a beautiful story about a number of different narratives that come weaving together, and the common collective theme that runs through them is people's connection with plants and trees. And though it's a fictional story, it's just embedded with so much dendrology, like love and lore of the trees in so many different ways. The science of how the trees communicate with each other, and the deep emotional response that we have towards these old growth forests being cut down, and the activism around it, and the whole blight of the chestnuts. And there's so many just beautiful passages and stories that the author relays through the telling of this novel that it can't help but get you more fascinated about trees, and it can't help but help you hold on to all the complicated feelings around humans' connection with nature and with forests in general. And so it touches something really special. So it's another one I definitely recommend.
Also an Audible. There's also an Audible version, so
totally.
You have lots of time to listen.
So what advice would you give for any kind of budding herbalist or healer, or even someone approaching grief work, just like somebody who's new into any of these things that you have had your feet in for 15 years? What advice might you give them?
So I guess for the herbalists and the plant lovers, and as we spoke before, stay curious, stay humble, allow space for the mystery, allow space for that unknowing, and to receive from parts of yourself that might not be as online as the intellectual academic parts. To appreciate, even though you might be in an herb school, or even though you might be reading these these tomes or canons of herbal knowledge to really regard your individual journey, that there's certain plants that'll be beckoning you specifically to work with, to understand, to commune with, maybe to write a song about. So to stay open to those forms and, try growing this plant, for a few years. Try doing, in a couple days, try to eat nothing but this plant. Be on dieta with this. Explore these plants in different ways. I think for folks that that might be in a grief process, I would say, see if you can be really present with yourself. See if you can devote time to just not fix anything, not change anything, not distract anything, but just be really present with whatever might be alive in your heart. Let your body be the guide. Just sit still and notice sensations in your body and see if you can be okay with that pain or that tightness or that energy, and just allow it and see what it might be, to give permission for that anger to show itself, for those tears to flow, for you to just hold yourself as you'd hold a little baby duckling, and to honor what you feel and know that it's okay to stay in bed and cry. It's okay to not get anything external done. It's okay to realize internal work actually takes a lot of energy, and okay and recommended to do that kind of work. It's okay to not be okay. It's okay to take off the masks of holding it all together and just be your authentic self. It's okay to share that and be witnessed in it, and to ask for support.
Do you have any new and exciting ventures coming up you'd like to share with the audience? Product launching, educational opportunities you're offering, or anything, or things you're studying, or anything you're working on that you'd like to tell people about?
Yeah. On the grief front, I will be continuing to host community grief rituals. And I'm doing some more in-depth work with that, both for people to explore who might be in a grief initiation, and also who want to be able to hold that space. I've been facilitating these circles for 7 years, and just this last summer did my first grief tending training, where I was teaching people some of the tools of how to hold this for their community, because I think it's important for people to have access to these kind of rituals. I'm in the process of kind of putting a schedule together around that. And on the musical front, there's probably going to be some collaboration with the Street Creature puppeteers. We might be going to Leaf in the spring and bringing the plant medicine through song and puppetry at that point. I'm still doing my private practice, and so folks who might want to tune into that medicine are welcome to reach out. And I'd say across the board, if you want to stay connected to the breadth of what I'm doing, this kind of musical and ritual healing work, individual healing journeys, feel free to sign up for my newsletter on my website. Is probably the best way to get info, which is at www.foxhealing.com. And
So when you do the grief ceremonies, do those get posted to your website, or I guess you announce them in the newsletter? Okay.
Yeah, so I'll send newsletters out for folks, and it happens seasonally. More and more, I'm being asked to take these rituals throughout the Southeast. Also, if you want to host me in a place, I've got a whole team of grief tenders that are interested to hold these kind of rituals and spaces. There's music too on Spotify. You can find it on Bandcamp. Is the best place to support musical artists like myself. And I've also got some videos, including a dandelion video and the Earth is Alive video. They're on YouTube. So you can check a few of those out. So a few songs that haven't been recorded.
Well, I want to thank you for joining us today. Thank you for chatting. It was awesome. And yep, like I said before, I'll put all of your links down below, and so people can follow you. We are on, if you want to follow us, we are on, you can listen to us on Anchor, on Spotify, and now Apple Podcasts. We're pretty excited. We also have a YouTube channel, which you can watch us if you're not already, Facebook group, and Instagram, and all those links will be down below. And if you'd like to support this podcast, you can do so through Anchor, our Anchor page for $1, $5, or $10 a month. Or you can rate it, give us a rating on iTunes. And we'll have a Patreon soon, so stay tuned for that. Lots of ways to support us, and we appreciate that.
And join us for our next episode, where we'll be welcoming Patricia Howell, who is the founder of the Botanologos Herb School in Northern Georgia and the author of, I remember the exact title because it's so, oh, you got it?
I got it.
Southern Appalachian Medicinal Plants of Southern Appalachia. It's like, it's so easy, it makes it hard to forget.
So, yes.
Which Jennifer has done some studying with her, and we've attended some classes of hers, one presented here in town with the Organic Grower School, and she's a very, very good educator. So that'll be a fun conversation. So stay tuned.
Yes. All right. Well, thank you, everyone, and we'll talk to you later. Okay. Bye.
Thanks, Josh. Have a good evening.
Thank y'all.